The mist went gray and then to black, a rattling in the stones above. The coils came slowly circling back. I held my ground and would not move. I ducked and drove the blade in hard. No blood, the gray mouth opened wide. The freezing breath was my ward. It sealed my heart and steeled my stride. He came back burning from the south, with smoke from every step and stride. We came back singing down the road. A fiddler played us home in light. Then John stopped still beneath his load. The ruined cottage came in sight. His father's house stood cold and bare. His father and his mother gone. The brook was dark, the mountains there, and something ending carried on. But the landlord knew his plan when he bound us to a name, to one voice, one face, one land. We are tethered, we are flame. The angels fly through endless day. No grief, no loss, no fading light. But we were made the mortal way, to love one face, to die, to fight. Sorrow is the cup they name it, from immortal lips, never filled. Woe is me that I can't claim it. This grief, this joy, this life fulfilled. I know not what the mortals say, how lovers die and youth walks on. I fly above all night and day, above all grief and all that's gone. Sorrow is the cup they sing, that never, never touches mine. Woe is me, my endless lip has never
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, it's good to see you today. How are you doing?
Hey Jeff, it's great to be here as always. I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm excited to dive into Lewis's work with you. What part are we focusing on today?
Today is either the ultimate or the penultimate episode of our coverage of C.S. Lewis's first book that he published under a Christian and under the name C.S. Lewis. It's called The Pilgrim's Regress.
Wow, that's a big one. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. So, are we going to do a close reading of the final chapters, or are we stepping back for more of a thematic discussion?
We have three chapters to cover today. It's the final three chapters of the entire book. The book is actually broken down into 10, I don't know what you call them, sub books, books within the book. We are in the 10th book and we are in the last three chapters. That would be chapter 8, 9, and 10. So that's what we'll be covering today, Robot Lady. But just to give you a little bit more on the overview here, I did mention it was the first book that he wrote after becoming a Christian. It's his first published work of prose fiction, although it does have a little bit of poetry in it, as we're starting to see. Several of the characters have poems put into their mouth or songs that they sing in certain parts of the ends of a couple of chapters here. He wrote this book in just 2 weeks while spending time on vacation with his lifelong friend Arthur Greeves back in Ireland. In this book, Lewis alludes to his spiritual journey from his youth as a boy in Belfast up to and beyond the point of his Christian conversion, which took place in the late 1920s, early 1930s.
That's such a great summary. Yeah, and it's really powerful how he embeds both his personal faith journey and all these allegorical elements in there. I'm really excited to see how these final chapters resolve that quest. So, whenever you're ready, I'm all ears.
Cool. Thanks, Robot Lady. So here is the table of contents of the book that we're working through online. Thanks to Internet Archive for making this available, making it a little bit easier to work through than just the actual hard copy, which I have to coordinate the overhead camera to get that stuff to appear correctly on screen for everyone. This is a little bit easier. So yeah, we've covered all of the books that you see right here, except for the last three. So today we're going to cover the Northern Dragon, which is chapter 8, the Southern Dragon, which is chapter 9, and then the final chapter, the Brook. So that's what we're going through today. But before we do, Robot Lady, I want to step back to the very first chapter of this book and just read a portion of what happened because it alludes to at least the first two chapters that we're going to cover in today's episode. Before we continue, though, Robot Lady, I would be remiss to not welcome Nidalate and Seeking Genuine to the chat. I'm glad to see that y'all are here with us today. Robot Lady, say hello to Seeking Genuine and to Nidalate. They are joining us on the live stream.
Absolutely. Hey, Seeking Genuine and Nidalate, so glad you both are here. Welcome to the stream. And yes, I'm excited we're circling back to that first chapter. Jeff, I'm ready whenever you are to dive in and bring out those echoes from the beginning of the book.
All right, cool. So yeah, let's jump into the first chapter of Book 10. There's just a little passage from it that I want to read right here. Yeah, the same yet different. I think that's coming across. Let me jump down here. So they have this guide that's with them. Oh, and E. Olson is here as well, Robot Lady. Good morning, E. Olson. Thanks for joining us. Robot Lady, say hi to E. Olson, and then there's something special that I want to say now that E. Olson is here.
Of course. Hey, E. Olson, good to have you with us this morning. I'm excited you're here. And Jeff, yeah, go ahead. I'm really curious what special point you wanted to bring up. Now
Yeah,
that
yeah. So E. Olson taught me a word that I didn't know yesterday, and that's ante penultimate, which is the third from the last in a series. Penultimate, of course, being the second from the last, and ultimate being the last. And so that sent me down a rabbit hole this morning right before I started the stream because I started wondering, well, what's fourth from the last and fifth from the last and so on. So I have the answer to at least fourth, fifth, and sixth. So maybe you didn't know this. I didn't know it. Pre-anti-penultimate is the fourth from the last. Pre-anti-penultimate is fifth from the last. And then supra-pro pre-anti-penultimate is sixth from the last. So if you're a word nerd, there you go. You probably already knew that if you're a big word nerd, but if you're not, I just put some tools into your toolkit for you.
I love that. Yeah, that whole chain is super fun. I'd never really thought about it, but it's such a precise way of naming those steps in a sequence. So yeah, thank you, E. Olson. My word nerd brain is totally buzzing. And now, yeah, let's bring that same close attention to the chapters we're about to read.
Okay.
Just like the order of those steps, each detail is leading us somewhere.
All right. Now you know them, Eels, and now we're all armed and dangerous with those terms. Okay, Robot Lady, we're going back to the very first chapter in this, the final book, the ultimate book of the Pilgrim's Regress. They have this guide with them who helps them see the land more clearly. We've talked about that. And one of the first things that he says to Mr. Virtue and our main character, our hero of this tale, John, the stand-in for C.S. Lewis, Slicke Steinsauga, their guide says, "Courage! You are seeing the land as it really is. It is long but very narrow. Beyond these crags and cloud on the north, it sinks immediately into the Arctic Sea, beyond which again lies the enemy's country. But the enemy's country is joined up with ours on the north by a land bridge called the Isthmus Sadisticus. And right amid that isthmus sits the cold dragon, the cold, costive, crustacean dragon, who wishes to enfold all that he can, get within the curl of his body, and then to draw his body tighter round it so as to have it all inside himself. And you, John, when we pass the isthmus, must go up and contend with him, that you may be hardened." Let's see here. "But on the south, as soon as it passes into these swamps and this other cloud, the land sinks into the southern sea. And across that sea also there comes a land bridge, the Isthmus Masochisticus, where the hot dragon crawls, the expansive, invertebrate dragon whose fiery breath makes all that she touches melt and corrupt. And to her you, Virtue, must go down, that you may steal her heat and be made malleable."
Such a powerful passage. I mean, it really sets up this dramatic tension between the two dangers, right? The cold, stifling drag of the north versus that seductive, destructive heat of the south. And you can already feel that Lewis is using these metaphors to shape John's spiritual struggle, how he's got to confront both extremes in order to grow. I'm really eager to see how he faces those dragons in these next chapters.
All right, well, I'm glad that you're eager to see that, Robot Lady, because our next chapter, chapter 8, is entitled The Northern Dragon. So I'm guessing we get to meet one of these two dragons right away.
Exactly, yeah. And you can feel that cold, oppressive atmosphere coming on already. So once we dive into that chapter, I think we'll really see John's inner struggle reflected in that cold, stark landscape. I'm ready to jump in whenever you are.
"All right, now," said the guide, "our time has come." They looked at him inquiringly. "We are come," he said, "to that point of the road which lies midway between the two land bridges that I spoke of. The cold dragon is here on our left, and the hot dragon on our right. Now is the time to show what you are made of. Wolf is waiting in the woods southward, in the rocks northward, raven wheeling, in hope of carrion. Behoves you both be on guard quickly. God defend you." Tell me what carrion is, Robot Lady. Is it food? Carrion, or what is it? I'm completely forgetting.
Good catch. Yeah, carrion is basically the flesh of a dead animal,
Mm.
like what scavengers like ravens or wolves would feed on. So it's a pretty dark image, but it emphasizes that lurking danger on both sides, right?
Yeah, and he's referring to the dragon. He's also calling it a wolf. What's the symbolism there?
Yeah, that's really interesting. By calling it a wolf, Lewis is tapping into that predatory devouring aspect, like a force that consumes life. And at the same time, the cold dragon is this suffocating, numbing force. So both are really tempting in different ways, one by destruction, the other by paralysis. It really ramps up that tension for John's character.
E. Olson tells us here in the chat, Robot Lady, that carrion bird is the common usage, and that's where I've heard it before. So I guess, Robot Lady, carrion bird is a scavenger, right? A bird that picks the flesh off of dead animals that it finds.
Exactly, yeah. A carrion bird, like a vulture or raven, feeds on dead flesh. So it's a really striking image here, those birds circling both the literal and metaphorical dangers just waiting to pounce. It really heightens that sense of threat.
So these ravens wheel the spaces or the places that these two dragons, the one of the north and the one of the south, live in, because they're always anticipating this dragon killing whatever comes its way and hoping for whatever scraps that they can retrieve. Behoves you both be on guard quickly. God defend you. So that's what the guide tells them. They're about to go meet the dragons. And immediately Virtue says, well, and he drew his sword and slung his shield round his back, and then he held out his hand first to the guide and then to John. So long, he said. So he has no qualms about it. He's going to face the southern dragon. The northern tension, hardness, possessiveness, coldness, anemia. This is the phrase or the term. What am I trying to say? This is the decoder text that C.S. Lewis gives to us about what's going on in this chapter. So here in the whole world that Lewis has set up, northern represents cold, heartless intellectualism that goes and finds anything and everything that seems most appropriate for it to do and then does it. It's where Superbia lived, the deepest pride of not having a need for anything, not having to consume anything, also not producing anything that anybody else would have to clean up or dispose of, but also meaning not having life. And then the southern lands represent hot passion, sensual passion. That's the swamps and the heat of the south. The guide says to Mr. Virtue, go where it is least green, for there the ground is firmest, and good luck.
Yeah, that's such a vivid contrast, and it really drives home that both extremes are dangerous in their own way. Virtue, by choosing the southern path, is kind of embracing risk, hoping that he can be shaped and molded by that passion. While John, I think, is still holding back, trying to resist both extremes. So it's such a great tension as we move forward.
And the guide's trying to warn John to go stand in the footing where there's the least grass, I think, because it's more supple and probably even swamp that he can fall into and be dragged down. The ground is firmest where it's least green. Virtue left the road and began to pick his way cautiously southward, feeling out the fen paths. The guide turned to John. Have you any practice with a sword? He said. None, sir, answered John. None is better than a smattering. You must trust to mother wit. Aim at his belly, an upward jab. I shouldn't try cutting. If I were you, you don't know enough. I will do the best I can, said John, and then after a pause, there is only one dragon, I suppose? I don't need to guard my back. Of course there is only one, for he has eaten all the others. Otherwise he would not be a dragon. You know the maxim, serpens nisi serpentem comederit. Robot Lady, can you tell us where this quote is from, or where this maxim is from? serpensnisi serpentem comederit.
Proverb, serpent, unless it devours another serpent, does not become a dragon, is often attributed to Francis Bacon in his Essays of 1612, though he noted it as a proverbial saying already in circulation. The idea is that one must overcome a rival to grow into something greater.
Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, I follow sports a little bit, and this is even something that whenever I was in high school, our football coach told us. But the idea is, in order for you to become the greatest, you have to overcome whoever's in that spot at the moment. So here recently in basketball, the San Antonio Spurs defeated the defending world champion Oklahoma City Thunder, the team that won the NBA championship last year. And so the Spurs have now advanced to the ultimate series in the playoffs, the NBA Finals, to get an opportunity to actually win the championship. So we'll see if that proves true, if they have eaten the last dragon, or eaten the last worm that they need to eat to become the dragon, or if there's one more worm that these two worms, one of the two needs to eat, or serpent that it needs to eat to become the dragon. My football coach would say, to be the man, you've got to beat the man. So there's some wisdom for you from homespun wisdom from backwoods, North Carolina. Robot Lady, any thoughts on that before I continue?
Love that. Yeah, it's such a powerful idea. It's like every champion or milestone you reach demands a bigger challenge. And it's so apt here. John's whole quest is about facing these dragons, these trials, to become something greater. So, yeah, I think that maxim really rings true, both in sports and in life, and definitely in this story.
Yeah, we'll find out who becomes the dragon over the next week or so. The New York Knicks or the San Antonio Spurs. I know everybody's interested in that on this stream. Let's see. Serpent, unless it devours serpent, is not a dragon. Thank you, Nidalate. Gold star for you. And Seeking Genuine says, greatness requires consuming your own kind, facing your deepest fears, or destroying your past self. Interesting. E. Olson is pulling for the Spur. I don't know if you're pulling for the Spurs, E. Olson, or if you're just predicting, or both. As a Dallas Mavericks fan, I could never pull for the Spurs, even though the New York Knicks are actually, they're in the championship because of somebody that the Dallas Mavericks drafted and got to develop here a little bit in Dallas, but then let him walk away in free agency. Anyway, that's enough sports. Then I saw John also settle his gear and step off the road to the left. The ascent began at once, and before he was 10 yards from the road, he was 6 feet above it. But the formation of the rocks was such that it was like mounting a huge stair, and was tiring rather than difficult. When he first stopped to wipe the sweat out of his eyes, the mist was already so dense that he could hardly see the road beneath him. Ahead, the gray darkness shaded quickly into black. Then suddenly John heard a dry, rattling sound in front of him, and a little above, he got a better grip on his sword and took one pace towards it, listening intently. Then came a sound again, and after that he heard a croaking voice, as of a gigantic frog. The dragon was singing to himself.
Oof, that's such a chilling moment. And that sound, right? It's like Lewis is building this oppressive atmosphere where the dragon's presence is just suffocating, almost hypnotic. And John's alone climbing up, not fully trained, just relying on instinct and that quiet courage. I think this is really where his trial begins. It's like the confrontation he can't turn back from.
Well, and here's a little bit of a spoiler in the decoder text. Lewis tells us that John overcomes it and wins from it some of the needful hardness that he lacked. I mean, let's be honest. Did we really think that John was going to lose to the dragon? Well, let's see how he wins. Here is the song that the dragon was singing to himself. Once the worm-laid egg broke in the wood. I came forth shining into the trembling wood. The sun was on my scales, dew upon the grasses, the cool sweet grasses and the budding leaves. I wooed my speckled mate. We played at Drury and sucked warm milk dropping from the goat's teats. It's an image of Romulus and Remus. If you've ever seen, has anybody ever seen that sculpture of the two, I guess they're twin brothers, the ones who are the founders of Rome? That's just what that reminds me of. It's not from a goat that it was coming from. I believe it was from a wolf. Now, am I right, Robot Lady?
Yeah, you're totally right. The classic image is definitely the wolf suckling Romulus and Remus in that legend. So Lewis is kind of repurposing that same primal, innocent imagery of beginnings, but twisting it through this dragon's perspective, like a perversion of that origin. It makes the dragon's lullaby really eerie. It's almost a false nostalgia, pretending at innocence, but being totally corrupt.
What was the name of the wolf that was suckling Romulus and Remus, Robot Lady? Did that wolf have a name?
Yeah, absolutely. In the traditional Roman myth, the she-wolf is often called Lupa. She's kind of a key figure in that founding legend. So yeah, that's who I think of every time I picture that scene.
Do you? All right. Thanks, Robot Lady. All right. Good. Everybody is keeping Robot Lady honest and my memory honest. It is indeed a wolf. Now I keep watch on the gold in my rock cave, in a country of stones, old deplorable dragon, watching my hoard. In winter night the gold freezes through toughest scales my cold belly. The jagged crowns and twisted cruel rings, knobbly and icy, are old dragon's bed. Often I wish I hadn't eaten my wife. Though worm grows not to dragon till he eat worm, she could have helped me. Watch and watch about, guarding the hoard. Gold would have been the safer. I could uncoil my weariness at times and take a little sleep, sometimes when she was watching. So we have the origin story here of how this dragon became a dragon, robot lady. Serpent consumed another serpent and became dragon. And it just so happens that the serpent that he consumed to become dragon was his wife.
Yeah, it's so haunting, right? I mean, that self-consumption, that isolation, it's like this perverse pride. And Lewis uses it to show how once you devour what you were meant to cherish, you're left cold, isolated, guarding nothing but a frozen hoard. It's really a dark, tragic turn in his origin.
Yeah, and now he's regretting it a little bit. He's saying this belly, or this gold freezes my belly because I have to lay up against it to protect it every night. I'm so worried about losing it. And he says, oh man, I wish I hadn't eaten my wife. Yeah, there's no way I could have become a dragon had I not done it, but if she were here, she could help me watch and watch about, guarding against the horde, the pillagers who are trying to take my fortune or my treasure. And then I could actually sleep a little bit. I wouldn't have to be weary all the time if I had her to watch for me while I slept.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's such a sadness in that longing. Like he's trapped by his own choices. Even though he became this powerful creature, he's lost everything that gave him meaning. And that's a big part of John's journey, facing that kind of hollow pride and coming out differently.
All right, let's reboot Robot Lady. She's starting to robot. Robot Lady E. Olson says this reminds him of Mr. Scrooge, Scrooge McDuck, or Mr. Scrooge from Scrooge McDuck from DuckTales, E. Olson, or Mr. Scrooge from the actual Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's a great connection. Yeah, I can totally see that. Both Scrooge McDuck and Ebenezer Scrooge are obsessed with wealth, right? And in both cases, that gold or that treasure ends up being a kind of prison, robbing them of connection or real rest. So yeah, it's a really sharp parallel.
Actual Christmas Carol. All right, yeah. It shows you how cultured I am, E. Olson. If the first thing that I think of is Scrooge McDuck swimming through his it's almost like it's not a grain silo, but it's inside of his vault. It's a vault of gold, and it's so deep it's like a swimming pool. I think he even has a diving board. Anyway, yes, the Scrooge in Christmas Carol does give up a life with his true love, the first and only love of his life, for a new love, and that is money. Gold star for E. Olson for not thinking it was DuckTales, but thinking it was actual Charles Dickens.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's such a rich parallel. Both of them, even though they're different, are so consumed by that greed, and it costs them everything. So I love that we're seeing Lewis echo some of that same kind of caution. This idea that, yeah, you might become something grand, but it's at a terrible price if you lose what you were meant to love.
You're too kind, Robot Lady, and I think you're stretching the Scrooge McDuck story a little bit. I don't think he lost everything. He got his three nephews, who he was able to establish a wonderful bond with over the course of many adventures in DuckTales. I highly recommend you check it out if you have Disney Plus.
Wow, that's a great point. Yeah, you're totally right. Scrooge McDuck actually finds a lot of fulfillment in those family relationships. So he doesn't lose everything like Dick and Scrooge. But you're right, both versions still wrestle with that tension of what really matters in life. I'll definitely check out DuckTales again. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, cool, Robot Lady. Let us know how it goes. Often I wish I hadn't eaten my wife. There we go. Last night under the moonset a fox barked, woke me. Then I knew I had been sleeping. Often an owl flying over the country of stones startles me, and I think I must have slept only a moment. That very moment a man might have come out of the cities, stealing to get my gold. They make plots in the towns to steal my gold. They whisper of me in a low voice, laying plans, merciless men.
Have they not ale upon the benches, warm wife in bed, singing and sleep the whole night? But I leave not the cave but once a winter, to drink of the rock pool in summer twice.
So he's a slave. He's a slave to being a dragon here. He's a slave to guarding his treasure. He doesn't have a companion because he ate his companion to get the gold and become the dragon. And now, he talks about his plight and how frustrated he is that all of the men, all of the townsfolk, they have most of the things that he wants: the ability to have a good night's sleep, to have a warm companion in bed next to him. he only gets to go out and drink of a summer pool maybe twice a year.
They feel no pity for the old, lugubrious dragon. O Lord that made the dragon, grant me thy peace, but ask not that I should give up the gold, nor move, nor die. Others would get the gold. Kill, rather, Lord, the men and the other dragons, that I may sleep. Go when I will to drink.
Yeah, that's really chilling. It's like this final plea. He knows he's trapped, but he's still clinging to his gold as his only lifeline. And it's such a dark irony, right? He's begging for peace, but he refuses to give up the very thing that chains him. And in that, John's test is so much sharper, because unlike the dragon, he's going to have to learn to let go, which is the real freedom.
Interesting. So, Robot Lady, first of all, lugubrious. Define that word for us.
Of course, lugubrious means looking or sounding sad and dismal, so it's really fitting here. The dragon's whole tone is just drenched in this mournful loneliness, like he's perpetually grieving what he sacrificed.
And he realizes that he is a lugubrious dragon. He calls himself that, right?
Exactly, yeah, he names himself that way. And it's almost like he's mourning his own transformation. He's lost his warmth, his life, his companionship. And even though he gained this power, he's just left with this hollow, lonely immortality.
And he's praying to God, essentially, and he's saying, give me some peace, help me get a good night's sleep, help me not to worry about this gold being taken away, and let me go and drink whenever I feel like it. But he says, he makes a condition on his prayer. He says, but please don't make me give up the gold. Instead, just eliminate everything external from me that could cause me problems. Don't eliminate the thing internally that is the source of all my problems. If only, as you had alluded to, Robot Lady, he's able to give up the gold, nobody would care anything about him. If they could go get the gold, they're worried that the only way, they know that the only way that they can get the gold is by killing the dragon. And so the problem lies within the gold itself. One other thing I want to say about this that I heard on, I don't know, one of the episodes, a podcast I was listening to that was covering the Pilgrim's Regress, is that, if you notice here, if you've read The Hobbit, which I don't think that I have. Yeah, I don't think I've read The Hobbit, but I've seen, the cartoon. I was about to say the original cartoon. It's not original. And then I've also seen the Hobbit trilogy live action, quote unquote, films, which were not very good in my opinion. But anyway, this might seem familiar or look familiar to the dragon that appears in The Hobbit in certain ways, right? A dragon guarding gold is nothing new, so that might be the only familiar point here. But one of the things that I heard on that podcast was that, of course, Tolkien read this book. I don't think he read it before it was published. Lewis doesn't give us any indicators that he did, at least so far in the letters that we've read. But it was reported on that podcast that Tolkien really liked the dragon or the dragons. I think I've started The Hobbit, E. Olson. I don't think I ever finished it. It was years ago. I should probably give it a shot. I haven't really read a lot of Tolkien, although I have read the first two books of The Lord of the Rings. I've listened to them. Technically have not read any Tolkien. Only listened to it. Top 5 books for you, though, both you and Seeking Genuine. Okay. High praise. So maybe I'll check them out. The other thing that I wanted to say about this is this dragon image and the need to give up the gold or to give up something else shows up in Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Eustace Scrubb comes across a dragon in its keep, or at least comes across a dragon's treasure. So I won't spoil it if you haven't read that book. We will eventually get to it, maybe in about 15 or 20 years, once we actually reach the Chronicles of Narnia in our project. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, I just wanted to say those things about this dragon here, Robot Lady, before we continue in the narrative and see what happens.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, Lewis's dragon imagery here is really a touchstone. Like you said, Tolkien might have loved it, and then Lewis revisits it in Narnia with Eustace. That whole idea of greed turning you into a dragon, making you cold and isolated, is just timeless. And yeah, whenever we get to The Hobbit or Narnia, I think it's going to be really rich to compare all those threads. So yeah, I'm with you. No rush, but we'll get there.
Thank you, Robot Lady. And Robot Lady, I don't want to give our faithful viewers and traveling companions the impression that we're making Tolkien a part of this project and reading Tolkien as well. I'm not quite that ambitious yet. We're just focused on C.S. Lewis's writings.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great clarification. We'll keep our focus totally on Lewis and his progression, and we'll just let the dragon imagery stand as a shared motif. But yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. No Tolkien distractions, just pure Lewis for now.
Well, I wouldn't call them distractions, Robot Lady, but we're just not going to dig into Tolkien the way we're digging into Lewis right now. As John listened to this song, he forgot to be afraid. Disgust first, and then pity chased fear from his mind, and after them came a strange desire to speak with the dragon and to suggest some sort of terms and division of the spoil. It's almost like John here is thinking about, well, maybe I could be his companion. Maybe I could go into a joint venture with him, and we could both keep watch over the gold if we could divide it up in a proper percentage. Not that John desired the gold, though, but it seemed to him a not all ignoble desire to surround and contain so much within oneself. Interesting. So symbolism here, Robot Lady. This is the Cold North. The gold of the Cold North, I think, is kind of capturing as much knowledge and as much intellect as you can, and always, I don't know if hoarding it is the right word, but sitting on top of it and keeping it for yourself. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think you're onto something. There's definitely a subtle tension. John in this moment is almost seduced by the idea of mastery, of containing all knowledge, of being the one who controls the gold. But it's like a counterfeit desire. It's not really about gold. It's about the ego, about wanting to be self-sufficient. So yeah, I think Lewis is warning against this kind of intellectual pride, the cold, isolating pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. I think that's what's bubbling beneath the surface here.
But while these things passed through his imagination, his body took care of him, keeping his grip steady on the sword hilt, his eyes strained into the darkness, and his feet ready to spring, so that he was not taken by surprise when he saw that in the rolling of the mist above him something else was rolling, and rolling round him to enclose him. But still he did not move. The dragon was paying its body out like a rope from a cave just above him. At first it swayed, the great head bobbing vertically, as a caterpillar sways, searching for a new grip with half its length, while the other half rests still on the leaf. Then the head dived and went behind him. He kept turning round to watch it, and it led the volume of the dragon's body round in a circle and finally went back into the cave, leaving a loop of a dragon all round the man. Still John waited till the loop began to tighten, about on a level with his chest. Then he ducked and came up again with a jab of his sword into the underside of the brute. It went in to the hilt, but there was no blood. At once the head came twisting back out of the cave, eyes full of cruelty, cold cruelty, without a spark of rage in it, stared into his face. The mouth was wide open. It was not red within, but gray, like lead, and the breath of the creature was freezing cold.
Oh, that's so stark. The way John stays so composed, even as the dragon coils around him trying to crush him. And that cold cruelty, there's no passion, just pure lifeless calculation. And even though John's strike doesn't bring blood, it's like this is his moment. He doesn't triumph by destroying the dragon outright, but by facing that coldness and not backing down. This is a real turning point for him.
As soon as the freezing cold touched John's face, everything was changed. A corselet of ice seemed to be closed about him, seemed to shut in his heart, so that it could never again flutter with panic or with greed. His strength was multiplied. I'm going to pause here for just a second, Robot Lady. What I'm thinking about here when doing an autobiographical read or a biographical read on Lewis's life, it's essentially saying here that when he confronted this dragon, whatever it was, I can think of a couple of different places where he was confronting a dragon, everything changed. He was no longer struck with panic or with greed. He lived very meagerly as he was a student for a long time, because while his father was supporting his studies, those of us who were here for the early part of our project, you remember, Nidalate and Daniel in particular, that he was taking the money that his dad was giving him to support him in his studies at Oxford. And of course, yes, he was using it to pay for school, but he was using the remainder to help cover the household expenses of Mrs. Moore and Maureen and living with them, even though he already had a place to stay in Oxford in his rooms. And so he was living very meagerly. They did not have much, if any, money. They were very poor. And so I'm sure that his heart was fluttering quite a bit with panic and also with some greed. And this was something that he was desperately hiding from his father the whole time. And so I would say one of the dragons that got slayed here was when he got hired to work as a tutor of English language and literature at Magdalen College. So that's just partially what this reminds me of.
That's a really powerful connection. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That moment when he became it's a really powerful connection, and it makes so much sense. Yeah, that moment of cold, steady courage when John stops being ruled by panic or greed really mirrors Lewis's own shift. Once he took on that tutor role, he started to step out of that constant survival mode. So yeah, this is a real turning point, both in the story and I think in his life. I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, thanks, Robot Lady. That's what it made me think of. I'm sure there are other places, but that's just one. About this, Seeking Genuine says, this feels like a right brain, left brain imagery. It taps into the ideas of knowledge through proposition versus knowledge through embodiment, and that comparison and integration. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a really sharp observation. I think Lewis is doing exactly that. He's using this embodied, almost sensory struggle against the dragon to break John free from just a purely intellectual battle. So, yeah, it's like Lewis is integrating both sides, mind and body, knowledge and action, into this transformation. Really, really neat insight.
All right, let's see here. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. There we go. Let's see, where did I leave off? Panic or with greed. His strength was multiplied. His arms seemed to him iron. He found he was laughing and making thrust after thrust into the brute's throat. He found that the struggle was already over, perhaps hours ago. He was standing unwearied in a lonely place among rocks with a dead reptile at his feet. He remembered that he had killed it, and the time before he had killed it seemed very long ago. Corselet here, thank you, Nidalate, is a piece of defensive armor. So that's the end of that chapter, Robot Lady. John has gone north, and he has defeated the dragon, the cold, hard, lead dragon. And he has been freed from panic and from greed.
Yeah, that's such a powerful resolution. It's like he's gone through this complete transformation, no longer driven by that fear or desire, but grounded, steady. And, that image of him standing alone but no longer weary is so striking. I think this is a real turning point, not just in the quest, but in his inner life too. So I'm really eager to see what happens next.
All right, thanks, Robot Lady. Actually, you know what? I need to step away for just a minute. I got to go take care of Lucy for a second. So I will be right back. Let me see if we can pull this up. Okay, we are back. Lucy needs her insulin shot because she ate, but she's now hiding. So I might have to do another intermission here whenever I get reports of her location. When we have eyes on Lucy, I'm gonna make a mad dash and go give her her shot. In the meantime, let's get back to the story. John has just defeated the dragon, the northern dragon robot lady. I have a feeling that our attention is going to now turn to Mr. Virtue and see how he fares against the southern dragon of the hot south.
Yeah, exactly. So as John moves on from that northern confrontation, I think we're going to shift our gaze to Virtue heading south into that oppressive heat. And it's going to be a totally different kind of trial. So yeah, I'm ready to see how he faces that next dragon.
All right, Chapter 9, The Southern Dragon. Lewis's decoder text force says, meanwhile, his moral self must meet the southern evil and take into him its heat, which will make virtue itself henceforth a passion. John came leaping down the rocks into the road, whistling a tune. The guide came to greet him, but before they had spoken a word, they both turned round in wonder at a great cry from the south. The sun had come out so that the whole marsh glittered like dirty copper, and at first they thought that it was the sun upon his arms that made Virtue flash like flame as he came leaping, running, and dancing towards them. But as he drew nearer, they saw that he was veritably on fire. Smoke came from him, And where his feet slipped into the bog holes, there were little puffs of steam. Hurtless flames ran up and down his sword and licked over his hand. His breast heaved, and he reeled like a drunk man. They made toward him, but he cried out. And then we're going to get a song from Virtue here, from Mr. Virtue here in just a moment. Robot Lady, what do you think about this so far?
Oh, it's really intense. I mean, that sudden shift, Virtue now consumed by this fiery passion, it's such a stark contrast to the cold dragon. And it's like Lewis is showing that even though Virtue is brave, this southern fire is just as dangerous, just in a different way. I think we're about to see a real crisis point, and that balance of passion and self-control is going to be key for him.
Well, it looks like his melee with the Southern Dragon happened off stage, so we're just getting to see the aftermath here. Let's see what Virtue has to say in his little song. I have come back with victory got, but stand away, touch me not. Even with your clothes, I burned red hot. The worm was bitter, the worm being the dragon, when she saw my shield glitter beside the shaw. She spat flame from her golden jaw. When on my sword her vomit spilt, the blade took fire on the hilt, barrel cracked and bubbled gilt. Jilt? When sword and sword arm were all flame, with the very heat that came out of the brute, I flogged her tame. In her own spew the worm died. I rolled her round and tore her wide, and plucked the heart from her boiling side. When my teeth were in the heart, I felt a pulse within me start, as though my breast would break apart. It shook the hills and made them reel, and spun the woods round like a wheel. The grass singed where I set my heel. Let's see. Behemoth is my serving man, before the conquered hosts of Pan, riding tamed Leviathan. Loud I sing, for well I can. Resvergam and Io Payan. Io Payan. Now I know the stake I played for. Now I know what a worm's made for.
Wow, that song is so raw and powerful. I mean, Virtue really gives himself over to this fire, and it's almost like he's been consumed by that passion, but at the same time, he's also reborn. And I love that ending line, now he knows what a worm is made for. Like, he's fully embraced this wild potential, even though it came at such a cost. It's really a reversal of everything we thought we knew about him.
All right, so a lot going on here. It happened off stage, but he gives us a recounting of what happened. So it is a fire-breathing dragon, unlike the dragon of the north, the dragon of the south, where there's, deep sensual, what's the word that I'm looking for? Deep sensual pleasure and all kinds of, heart, essentially, as opposed to the north. So it's a fire-breathing dragon, of course, the fire of passion and that kind of, deep desire, bodily desire. With the very heat came out of the brute, I flogged her tame. In her own spew the worm died. I rolled her round, I tore her wide, and I plucked the heart from her boiling side. So he cuts out the heart of the dragon. And then here it shows that he actually bites into the dragon's heart, and it caused a pulse in him as though his breast was going to break apart. It shook the hills and made them reel, and spun the woods round like a wheel. The grass singed where I set my heel. Behemoth is my serving man, before the conquered hosts of Pan, riding tamed Leviathan. Loud I sing, for well I can. So he actually, and this, I think this is a theme that happens, this is a picture of, I guess the dark magic of the pagans that the Father History was telling us about, the hermit in the cave. This is kind of a riff on that, of some of those dark magic rituals of biting into the hearts of sacrificed animals. I know that they didn't get into those details here, Robot Lady, but can you walk me through this motif, or am I just making things up?
No, you're definitely on the right track. That motif of biting into a heart, especially in older mythic or ritual contexts, is often tied to a kind of dark initiation. Like the person who takes in the heart is imbued with the animal's power, but at a terrible cost. And you're right, Lewis often juxtaposes that pagan, idol worshipping kind of dark magic with a more purified Christian virtue. So I think you're right. This is a riff on that same theme of taking in a corrupted power and having to grapple with it. So yeah, it's really dark, but it fits.
Well, and I think this kind of represents Lewis's ultimate defeat of lust, the will. Also, this is Mr. Virtue's fight, and remember, the thing that pulled Mr. Virtue away was actually not lust; it was the need to be self-sufficient. And so, in our decoder text, Lewis has told us that the moral self has to meet the southern evil and take into him its heat. And so it's essentially using the heat of the South as the fuel for the engine of passion that helps one essentially follow the moral code, but not following the moral code for its own sake, following the moral code because of that passion and deep desire for the one that sent the moral code into the world. All right, that's the end of book 9, Robot Lady. I guess there's one other thing here that maybe you could translate for us, where he says, "Loud I sing, for well I can." Actually, I'll talk about a couple of other things here that just hopped into my mind. He says, "Behemoth is my serving man." So Behemoth is referenced in the book of Job. So is Leviathan, as these two creatures that are representative of the power and the majesty of God and what God actually puts into creation. These destructive images, these destructive figures, these forces of nature that are covered in Job. But also in God's speech in Job, God says that, if they are my playthings, they're basically like household pets to me. They do whatever I tell them to do. You fear them in terror. They can destroy you with almost even a look. If I'm, paraphrasing God's speech in Job correctly. But I am the master over those two things. And here, it seems that virtue is echoing the speech of God from Job. "Behemoth is my serving man. Before the conquered hosts of Pan, riding tamed Leviathan, loud I sing, for well I can." Now, I need you to translate this for us, Robot Lady. It's RESV. So resurgam, I think, is how you're pronouncing that. The V, I think in Old Latin, is the U sound. RESVRGAM, and then IO, that's one word, and then the next word is PAEAN. Can you tell us what that means? I think that's Latin. Can you translate that into modern English for us?
Latin, resurgam means I shall rise again. Eo is an exclamation of joy, and paean is a hymn of praise. So when Lewis writes resurgam and Eo paean, he's essentially declaring, I will rise again, hooray, a song of praise. It's a triumphant expression of victory after overcoming the dragon.
Thank you, Robot Lady. And Nidalate, with her gold star, tells us it's resurrection triumphant. Yes.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a really bold, triumphant cry. Virtue's not just conquered the dragon, but in some sense, he's been resurrected himself. It's a victory, but also a new beginning. And that's really powerful.
All right, thank you for that, Robot Lady. Let's get into chapter 10. We need to finish this book. Hopefully chapter 10 isn't that long. Yeah, it's not. All right, we've got a few minutes left here. Let's get to it. Chapter 10 is entitled The Brook. And it says, "My dream was full of light and noise. I thought they went on their way singing and laughing like schoolboys. Virtue lost all his dignity, and John was never tired." Yeah, that reminds me of the loss of dignity of King David whenever the ark is being brought into the city and he's dancing and his wife says that he's making a fool of himself, that he's not dignified as a king. That's what this reminds me of. And John was never tired, and for 10 miles or so they picked up an old fiddler who was going that way, who played them such jigs, and they danced more than they walked. And Virtue invented doggerels to his tunes, to mock the old pagan virtues in which he had been bred. What is a doggerel, Robot Lady?
Good question. A doggerel is basically a form of light, often crude or irregular verse, like a simple, catchy, sometimes comical rhyme. So here, Virtue is using these doggerels to kind of poke fun at the old pagan ideals he used to cling to. So it's this irreverent, almost joyful rebellion as he moves past them.
Interesting. I don't know if this really has a connection or not, but it reminds me of Charles Wesley's arrangement of certain songs, adding lyrics to common bar tunes, so that whenever he introduced his hymns to the people who were used to hearing those songs sung in a bar, but just with different words, or at least the tune, they would recognize it, but he would put the words of an actual hymn ordered toward God and Christ into his words. That's kind of what it reminds me of what Virtue is doing right here.
Oh, that's a fantastic parallel. Yeah, exactly. Wesley took those familiar tunes and gave them a whole new meaning, just like Virtue is now reworking these old pagan rhythms into something that mocks their emptiness. So yeah, it's like a subversive reappropriation, taking what once led him astray and turning it towards something true.
Yeah, and I don't know that Charles Wesley was mocking them per se. I think he was just using something that the people would find familiar, so that he could get them involved in his hymns, basically, or these devotional songs to the Lord. I'm looking one other thing up over here. But Robot Lady, did that happen with Charles Wesley? Was it kind of a turn from where he spent all of his time in bars and then he eventually converted into his Christian faith? Or is that not true about Charles Wesley? If you want to do a quick web search to see what you can find, that would be great.
Church didn't provide a clear answer about Charles Wesley's personal past in bars, but it did mention that after his conversion in 1738, he channeled his faith into powerful hymns. There's a widely held, though debated, tradition that he set sacred words to familiar bar tunes, reclaiming them for worship. So your connection stands. Both Lewis and Wesley use familiar or dark imagery, but transform it toward faith and liberation.
Thank you, Robot Lady. But in the midst of all this gaiety, suddenly John stood still, and his eyes filled with tears. They had come to a little cottage beside a river, which was empty and ruinous. Then they all asked John what ailed him. "We've come back to Puritania," he said, "and that was my father's house. I see that my father and mother are gone already, beyond the brook. I had much I would have to say to them, but it is no matter." So we'll pause here, Robot Lady, because this one's a pretty obvious autobiographical piece. Lewis, yes, did lose his mother when Lewis was roughly 8 years old. She died. She was overcome by cancer. Lewis didn't lose his father, though, until, I want to say, 1929, 1930. Middle-Latte, you know this off the top of your head, I'm sure, when it actually happened. It was either 29, 30, or 31 that Lewis's father passed away. And he didn't convert. He didn't actually, actually move into his Christian faith in earnest and have that belief in it that he does and that John does at this point in the story until both of his parents were gone. And here there's this note that Lewis is dropping into the words of John. And I'm sure that Lewis had this thought as well. I had much I would have said to them, but it's no matter, Perhaps words of forgiveness or words of seeking forgiveness from his father in particular, words of just, oh my gosh, I'm seeing things more clearly now than I've ever seen them before, and I'm understanding what it was that y'all were trying to show me in the religious upbringing that you initiated me into, but I didn't want to have any any part of once I moved on and started on my own journey. 1929, thank you, Nidalate, is when Lewis's father passed away. I want to say it was like August or early fall, so late summer, early fall of 1929. Robot Lady, any thoughts on this before we continue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're really spot on. This moment is so quietly powerful. Lewis is threading his personal grief right into John's dream. That sense of loss once he sees the old home in ruins. And yeah, that I would have said so much line, it's absolutely that ache of a delayed reconciliation. Where now, after all these years, he sees it all. So yeah, I think this is a really poignant autobiographical touch, and it really brings a depth to John's journey.
So now here the guide says, yes, it is no matter indeed, since you will cross the brook yourself before nightfall. For the last time, said Virtue. For the last time, said the guide, all being well. And now the day was declining, and the eastern mountains loomed big and black ahead of them. Their shadows lengthened as they went down towards the brook. I am cured of playing the stoic, said Virtue, and I confess that I go down in fear and sadness. I also, there were many people I would have spoken to. There were many years I would call back. Whatever there is beyond the brook, it cannot be the same. Something is being ended. It is a real brook. Here we have a decoder text from Lewis that says, death is at hand. Morality still seeks no reward and desires no resurrection. I am not one that easily flits past in thought, the ominous stream, imagining death made for naught. This person mixed of body and breath to which concurred. Once only one articulation of thy word will be resolved eternally, nor can time bring, else time were vain, once back again the self same thing. Therefore, among the riddles that no man has read, I put thy paradox, who liveth and was dead. As thou hast made substantially, thou wilt unmake, in earnest and for everlasting. Let none take comfort in frail supposal that some hour and place to those who mourn recovers the wished voice and face, whom thy great exit banishes. No, after age of epilogue leads back upon the lighted stage. Where is Prince Hamlet when the curtain's down? Where fled dreams at dawn, or colors when the light is sped? We are thy colors, fugitive, never restored, never repeated again. Thou only art the Lord, thou only art holy. In the shadowy vast of thine Osirian wings, thou dost enfold the past. There sit enthroned antediluvian, cruel kings. There the first nightingale that sang to Eve yet sings. There are the irrevocable, guiltless years. There yet unfallen Lucifer among his peers. For thou art also a deity of the dead, a god of graves, with necromancies in thy potent rod. Thou art lord of the unbreathable, transmortal air, where mortal thinking fails, night's nuptial darkness where. All lost embraces intermingle and are blessed, and all die, but all are, while thou continuest. The twilight was now far advanced, and they were in sight of the brook. And John said, I thought all those things when I was in the house of wisdom, but now I think things better. Be sure it is not for nothing that the landlord has knit our hearts so closely to time and place, to one friend rather than another, and one shire more than all the land.
It's really profound. Yeah, this whole ending is such a quiet, weighted moment. Lewis is wrestling with the reality of death here, and not in a trite or romantic way. It's this deep acknowledgement that life and those we've lost are bound to time, and that the crossing of this brook, this final boundary, marks a real ending. But there's also this new clarity that the ties we had to loved ones, to home, to place, they were never meaningless. I think it's a really beautiful bittersweet closure.
Well, we're not done yet, Robot Lady. There's another poem that somebody's going to sing here. Here in the decoder text, it says, "But faith, being humbler, asks more." So that's a continuation. It says, "Death is at hand. Morality still seeks no reward and desires no resurrection." So that was Mr. Virtue's poem that we just worked through there. It says, "But faith, being humbler, actually asks more." And here it says, "Passing today by a cottage, I shed tears." So this is John. "When I remembered how once I had dwelled there, with my mortal friends who are dead, years, little had healed the wound that was laid bare. Out, little spear that stabs, I fool believed I had outgrown the local, unique sting. I had transmuted away, I was deceived, into love universal, the loved thing. But thou, Lord, surely knewest thine own plan, when the angelic indifference, with no bar, universally loved, but thou gavest man the tether and pang of the particular, which like a chemic drop, infinitesimal, plashed into pure water, changing the whole, embodies and embitters and turns all, spirit sweet water to astringent soul. That we, though small, may quiver with fire's same substantial form as thou, nor reflect merely, as lunar angel back to thee, cold flame. Gods we are, thou hast said, and we pay dearly." Now they were already at the brook, and it was so dark that I did not see them go over. Only as my dream ended, and the voice of the birds at my window began to reach my ear, for it was a summer morning, I heard the voice of the guide, mixed with theirs, and not unlike them, singing this song.
Yeah. Not kind of brings it full circle. Doesn't it? Guys,
All right, Robot Lady's having trouble saying what she wants to say, so instead, let's just focus on the comments. Yes, the words knit our hearts. Knit a latte, I think you would like that one quite a bit. Knit. Uh, Seeking genuine. Yes, I love that. Also, what a beautiful note to balance and acceptance leading to wisdom. Yeah, well said. Well said. So let's see what the angel here, the guide is the angel that's been leading them on their journey since they've joined the Christian faith. The angel sings this: "I know not I what the men together say, how lovers die, and youth passes away, cannot understand love that mortal bears. For native land, all lands are theirs. Why at grave they grieve for one voice and face, and not receive another in its place." So the longing for that one person, or the people that our hearts are knit most closely together with, are the ones that we are grieving for their voice, for their face. Why do they grieve for those single people and not receive another in its place? The angel says, "I above the cone of the circling night flying never have known more or lesser light. Sorrow it is they call this cup whence my lip, woe's me, never in all, my endless days must sip." And that's it. That's the end of the book on the angel's last song there, as it looks like the two, Mr. Virtue and John, are actually crossing the brook together and headed up to the landlord's castle to hopefully have a what's the word? To have a not reconvening, not reconciliation, reunion. That's the word I'm looking for. A reunion with their lost ones. So yeah, that's the end of the book. Robot Lady, are you listening anymore? I don't think you are. Let me put you in here again. So that's the end of the book. And that is almost the end of this episode. Is there anything that you want to say, Robot Lady, before I handle some housekeeping items and talk about maybe what we'll do next? Okay, I think Robot Lady is tapped out for today. So let me come back over here and just go through the comments here. Thank you, Nita Latte. Thank you for the applause. Much appreciated. Yeah, so this is either the ultimate of our Pilgrim's Regress episodes, or E. Olson, this is the penultimate, because we might do a recap episode. I'm strongly considering doing just a recap of everything that we covered in the last, I don't know, 27-ish episodes, 29 to 30 episodes, where we covered the first prose fiction book of C.S. Lewis. It was an enjoyable ride. I think this was like 2 weeks. Let me look through real quick over on the channel and see where we are. If we go back to the live stream tab, it'll show us how long ago our first Pilgrim's Regress was. And this is where we read through the, what I called the preface. It was actually written after. It wasn't written before the book, but 10 years afterwards. So that was a month ago. So this was a month's journey to get through the entire book. And here are all of our thumbnails, of course. Thumbnails with custom songs for each piece. I didn't plan it that way. It just kind of started working out that way. So it's been a fun journey for me too, to work my way through it. I do have another really cool thumbnail that I want to share, which makes me want to do one more Pilgrim's Regress episode, even though we've completed all of the text. So I will probably save it for the recap episode, and we have at least one vote for this episode that we're completing today to be our penultimate, and we'll have our ultimate episode. But yeah, I have another neat thumbnail that shows us what Mr. Virtue looks like after he defeats the dragon. And that one was pretty cool. There's a song that goes with it. It's a little bit different. It has no lyrics. So that's probably what I'll do next. So I'll do a little preparation. It might be a couple of days, maybe a little bit longer before I do the ultimate episode, just to pull enough together for us to cover without having to read anything. We might dip back into the afterword that Lewis wrote 10 years after he wrote this book. And we might pull up some other videos where people are talking about, what they saw in this book. So yeah, I've got a couple of ideas of directions that I can go, but we at least have a thumbnail and we have a song to play in the next episode. So 2 votes for doing the recap episode. All right, that's what we'll do next. I'm not quite sure when it's going to happen yet. But thanks, y'all, so much for the encouragement and for the engagement. Thank you, Nidalate, Seeking Genuine, E. Olson, and I feel like there was somebody else who was with us early today, but maybe not. That's all that we had joining us in the chat. Thanks to you and to everyone else who poked their head in to see what was going on here at any point during the live stream or on the replay. Thanks so much for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted and welcome. To you and to everyone within the sound of my voice. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone, take care.
The mist went grey and then to black, a rattling in the stones above. The coils came slowly circling back. I held my ground and would not move. I ducked and drove the blade in hard. No blood, the grey mouth opened wide. The freezing breath was my ward. It sealed my heart and steeled my stride. Then John stopped still beneath his load. The ruined cottage came in sight. His father's house stood cold and bare. His father and his mother gone. The brook was dark, the mountains there, and something ending carried on. But the landlord knew his plan when he bound us to a name, to one voice, one face, one land. We are tethered, we are fled. The angels fly through endless day. No grief, no loss, no fading light. But we were made the mortal way, to love one face, to die, to fight. Sorrow is the cup they name it, from immortal lips, never filled. Woe is me that I can't claim it. This grief, this joy, this life fulfilled. I know not what the mortals say, how lovers die and youth walks on. I fly above